Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another Monday night. We are back in action as a trio over here. Galley's back in action. I'm your host, as always, Timushin here in Chicago, where the weather got nice, like 40s or 50s or whatever it was, further proving if you just wait, you really don't have to shovel. And the driveway and the sidewalk is a proof of it. I keep telling the neighborhood, just wait, guys. You guys don't have to go out and the bad thing is, to be honest, when there was like just soft flurries, I didn't do anything and then drove over it, and now it was ice, and I was like, it'll get warm eventually. So, and it did. So I can't complain about the weather. Galley, how's it going? Back in action?
A lot better than I was at this time last week. Let me tell you, you did not want me or the snot or grossness that was occurring during this time last Monday. Nobody wanted to see any of that, and I would have spent 3/4 of it in the bathroom, to be honest. So I'm doing better, and like you, I'm waiting for that warm weather. It got to about 35, 40 today. They're calling for 2 to 3 days in the 50s this week. So I'm hoping that will start to melt some of the glacier that is Western Massachusetts at this moment.
Yeah, see, Ryan says beautifully, because Ryan is in Indiana. I'm assuming got nice over there that way too. But yeah, I mean, we never got like a ridiculous snow. It was just like I said, I drove over it and made it ice, and then there was another couple of inches on top of that. But now you're digging ice, and I'm not digging ice, but the sun did, so it's taken care of. Bickler, what's happening? I can see Bickler shoveling, cursing up a storm on a regular basis.
Yeah, I retired from shoveling snow early, so I'm all done with that. I was telling Gary earlier, it's starting to warm up here, so it's back in the 50s, which is good. Because anytime we're below 40 here, people just stop operating like normal human beings and like become infinitely dumber. They just like people can't drive right. They like it's a mess down here if we get any sort of weather that's cold. So
Weaponizing competence is a great way to put it, actually. That's how I roll. It just works like a charm when you wait. But yeah, I mean, it must be nice to not have to shovel, I guess. But let's do this. I had a question that I kind of had set on my mind, but now that I read the backup follow-up question, I think it's a better one. But first, as always, it's not right without the music. Trivia time, people. Bickler, I know you love it, dude. Don't act like you don't like this music.
love it.
Fun fact, Yali, when you were away before last week's podcast, I was playing this, and Bickler and I were like really jamming to it right before the pod over here. So Bickler's on board with the song. Okay, let's go with this. I really like this. 3 clubs have been on top of the Premier League since the beginning of this season. Give me those 3 teams. Galley. The beat just kicked in when I came to you, dude.
Liverpool.
Good job. Man, you know your shit.
I do. What's frustrating me is I can't remember if it was Brentford or there was a period earlier where one of those teams, whether it's Brentford or I'm going to say Liverpool, Forest, and Brentford.
Liverpool, Forest, Brentford. Bickler. 3 teams have held the top position in the Premier League table at the end of a match week. Who are these 3 teams?
Part of me wanted to say Chelsea for a minute, but I think they only got as high as second. I'll go Liverpool, City, and we're playing Newcastle. So for the sake of relevancy, I'll go Newcastle.
No, see, the other question was Newcastle related, and we didn't do that. It was actually
cool. Thanks for switching it up.
Brighton. It was Brighton, not Brentford, wasn't it?
It was Brighton. Yes, Brighton was the one. Yeah, I think, and that was week. I think they didn't have like a 4-0 or 5-0 or something like that in the week. And I think they did have like 2-3 wins or something. I have to go back, but I'm assuming it is from like the early on weeks. And then City, and yeah, actually, all the Arsenal have never been higher than 2. And hopefully, the way things are going, they will never be higher than 2. Okay, how about this one? I'll ask you guys this one too. This is Newcastle related, Bickler. So this one goes out to you, a special request a Newcastle question over here.
Oh, you get one. I'm exiting. My contract.
No, it's coming. It's coming.
My contract says I'm only obligated to do this section and answer one question.
To be fair, actually, you had like the better question. But Liverpool have only lost 12 of 92 fixtures at Anfield against Newcastle. How many of these 12 were in the Premier League era?
Eight.
Galley.
They've lost 12 total league matches against Newcastle at home, and you're asking how many since basically since 92, right? Is that when the Premier League started?
92, I think, yes. Right? Yeah, don't quote me, but
I think 8 seems high with it being 12 total. So I'll hedge that and say 5.
it's actually only one. 1994, April 16, 1994, we lost 2-0 match week 39, the first meeting between the clubs at Anfield in the Premier League. So I guess it was 94.
What are you saying? Is 8, 7, and 9?
Yeah, if I read the answer, I guess I would know the other one.
So,
it's 94. Yeah, April 16, 1994 was the 1-2-0, 23-5-0 since then in the Premier League at Anfield against Newcastle. So hopefully we'll continue that. Oh, look, Aaron is in the comments, and he is now a believer. In the great words of Michael Scott, how the turntables... and here we go. So what a difference a week makes. What a difference a week makes. But let's talk about this weekend. We kind of talked about on the Friday morning show. Didn't really have a whole lot of hope for West Ham, but this is why they play the games, Gally. And and anything can happen in the Premier League. You can't pencil in any game for 3 points. I don't care if it's against Southampton. You should never pencil in 3 points. So that happens on Saturday. It makes almost a free hit for Sunday's game. And then we win the Sunday's game, and it almost looks, even people like Aaron have now believed suddenly in the title race. What I want to mainly ask you is, how do you think the Saturday game impacted the Sunday game? Overall.
I don't think it changes the mentality of the Liverpool players, outside of the fact that I think you're able to play a little freer, knowing they've already dropped some points, right? Like, so all the guys who say things like, we didn't even pay attention, we weren't watching, like, I think it was the Anfield rap, it was hilarious. One of the guys, maybe it was Neil Atkins, or somebody was like, Virgil sent the WhatsApp chat to everybody, go to bed early, lads, we're getting it tomorrow. Like you motivate people this exact way. And I do think that helped. I think as soon as that final whistle goes, I think that's when the real leaders of that side, the Robertsons, the Virgils, I think that's when they start pulling guys aside and saying to themselves, hey, we make a statement tomorrow. Tomorrow we end this. Tomorrow we stop all of these what if they lose to Newcastle? What if Arsenal wins their match in hand? It's only a 2-pointer. Because basically now it's an 11-point lead. Yes, we have a game in hand. If they win that game, it's 8 points. They have to beat us, and we have to lose for 3 other matches, and that's assuming they win every match. And based on what we're seeing, I don't think it's possible. So I think it had a big factor in allowing the side to play the way they did in themselves, and I don't think they ever chased that match, even though we were out of possession, even though it wasn't maybe the way people thought it would go. I think it allowed them to stay calm and stay a little bit more controlled. It felt a lot like a free hit, and it wouldn't have felt like a free hit if Arsenal had just done what they should have and beat West Ham 1-0 at home on an ugly own goal.
See, that's where I'm like, I get the same question to you, Bickler, but I'm going to switch it up for you a little bit in terms of like how slow. I mean, he talked about why we played the way we did. Jota could not go, so he can't start. Gakpo is not available. And I've been saying this for months over here. You cannot trust Nunez in keeping shape and discipline and press at proper angles and stuff like that. So in some ways, the lineup kind of made itself in that sense. But do you think Like normally he would have gone for Nunez, but he felt like, you know what, whatever we do, we're not losing this game. We'll let them have the ball. We'll counter. That's when they're like, that's when you can really have City and go at them. And it worked like a charm. But do you think he plays the same way if West Ham wins the day before?
I don't think the way we lined up had anything to do with the West Ham result. And I'm not sure if everybody's fit, Darwin starts up the middle. I kind of think he ends up doing a Diaz, very similar to how he played Diaz dropping really deep a couple matches back. I'm trying to think what match that was now. And I'll tell you why, because I if you look at the side and it's set up at that 4-2-4 to begin with, really, which like ended up really looking more like a 4-3-3 at times, and then sometimes like a 4-4-2 when both dropped, when both Jones and Soboslai would drop in. That's pretty intentional, right? I mean, you're doing that because you're trying to overload the midfield. So like, I don't know that like, are you starting Darwin if you're concerned about adding midfield numbers? Probably not, right? I think dropping Diaz deep probably is your answer there. But I like this scenario because what it really allowed them to do was it allowed them out of possession to go into a 4-3-3 at times and pull Mo back as an additional midfielder to help Trent. Or it allowed Mo to stay forward and you to drop either Jones, Soboslai, or both into the mids to overload the midfield. So did a lot of great things tactically.
Do you think if Jota is available, he starts and Diaz stays on left? Or you think we still roll it out like this? That's where I'm torn, I guess.
I think the preferred three in this matchup would have been Gakpo left, Diaz middle, Mo right.
Yes, but I mean, Gakpo, was not really that realistic, right? For him to be
right. I'm saying if we had all of our parts, right? Like if we had everybody healthy, can you do Jota? I don't know that he does that. If he does, I'm not sure that you don't see Jota left.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the interesting part to me. I don't know if he would have changed anything at all. Like Wade says he wanted to play the same way. He did counterattack. And I think, ultimately, we're not used to this, Gally. Like there have been times where there have been spells in games, right? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you want to kill the game, whatever it is, where we sit back and say, you can have the ball, especially under slots. We've never done, I think there was only one other game. Was that Arsenal game? Maybe somebody had more possession and we were totally fine with it. You can have the possession kind of a deal. It felt odd because we haven't watched that. Like that entire second half felt like, the away team at Anfield kind of thing, like sitting back, absorbing pressure. But ultimately, aside from some Trent hiccups against Doku on one side, it was so compact and well drilled, maybe because of the people involved, that 4 people in the middle involved, that they really could not create a whole lot. I mean, you're nervous because they had the ball in the city, but really they were not creating anything ultimately.
No, I mean, outside of the one opportunity on the offsides goal, which part of the reason he gets the shot off is he's 2.5 feet offsides when the pass comes in. I mean, we'll talk, I'm sure, about great performances and who we thought was really good. I thought the partnership between Van Dijk and Konate was as good as we've seen it in a while. I thought they really bossed that front line. I thought they toyed with Foden playing in that false 9. It just didn't work for them. You had Mamouche taking up good space. Kind of feel like he was trying to drag Virgil and Konate at times out of position. It wasn't working. To your point, Doku was, taking it to Trent. Thank God he doesn't have end product. And even though he beat him to the byline every single time, he had nothing to do with it. But in some ways, like it almost felt like they were almost allowing him to go 1v1 with Trent and being like, we'll drop off and we'll make sure that we're covering the angles because we're not going to give you anyone to cross the ball to. And I do agree with you. I think it was evident that Mo, Soboslai, they were doing extra work to protect Trent as the match went on. And I thought that was really, really, really important. I actually think the manager probably I think he wanted to start with this type of setup. I think he wanted, once he knew Gakpo was not available to him. I don't think the Jota thing had anything to do with it. I think Jota's on the bench, even if he says he can go. I think the manager, to your point, I think he liked the idea of having the 4 bodies in the midfield. They have no legs. They're old. They basically played man-to-man with Soboslai and Jones, and they just toyed with that midfield the entire match. Like, Nico looked out of place. De Bruyne looks like he's literally shot and done. And then
Yeah,
you really get little out of Foden. They were pedestrian all over the pitch. It was shocking.
That's the thing, Nico. We were talking about this in the pre-match. Nico, after the Newcastle game, was probably like, "Dude, this Premier League is not that hard. Like, what's the big deal over here?" And I think he was in for a shock. You can kind of see it in the second goal. He's so late, like tracking back and closing down and stuff like that. But there were so many moments that Ford in the middle, really, like, obviously Van Dijk and Konate. Somebody was saying it in the comments. I think it was Spencer. Like, they had a phenomenal game. But I really think Bickler, the credit goes to, yes, I know Mo can do his thing. Maybe it's not fair to him that we take that, almost like Van Dijk, we take that for a given now that he's going to do his thing, kind of a deal. But the four in the middle, because there were so many times where like somebody would step up into the midfield from like defense as they're building up. And I was talking about it this morning with Matush. I've been there, done that. Like as a sweeper, you're like, oh, look, space. And you kind of go into it. And suddenly it just like closes. You're like, oh, shit. There's like three people and you kind of like got nowhere to go. It almost looked like those four were so perfect in their positioning. And I think that was the key to everything, is how those four work together more than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's obviously something they worked on, and goes back to like, we're going to have a double pivot in front of two world-class defenders and then be able to overload the midfield from other angles. So I think the thing that stood out to most to me about that, like I said it a minute ago with Galley, like this team has proven over the course of the season with Schlott that it can win in multiple ways in possession. What I didn't know is that it can win out of possession. And we haven't seen a Liverpool side do that in probably a decade. So, like, pre-Brendan Rodgers. So to see a Liverpool side be able to dominate a match without holding possession is pretty damn scary for the rest of this league. I think when I look back at this match, the one thing that sort of stood out to me outside of individual performances was when you look throughout that match, if you're looking at who's looking at who and who's going where, Verge was directing traffic the entire match, including where Ali should be, which I haven't seen a whole lot of. We talked about being a little bit disappointed in his leadership last year. I think he's grown tremendously as a captain, but this was the first time in a big match that I can remember where the team felt like Verge's and nobody else's.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about that, because, they were mentioning it, and I've seen it. I think it was a couple of weeks ago when we scored a tying goal. He doesn't even celebrate. He calls everybody over here and stuff like everybody back because we got to get the winning goal and stuff like that. And I think what I really liked is like him constantly directing traffic for one. But I think, Gally, maybe it is difficult. First of all, we always talk about this, right? Like the captain kind of like reflects the manager. So you had Hendo, who was probably a perfect match for Klopp in terms of like directing traffic, yelling, screaming, running, doing that. And I think it's kind of hard to replace a guy like that when probably that's what's expected and that's what everybody is used to. And maybe that's what the guy on the sideline is probably dictating more of Van Dijk's kind of leadership. Not like calm and collected, but still directing traffic, but not yelling and screaming. Still, there's a lot of positive reinforcement that comes to him too. We're kind of used to him, glaring at Robo famously over the years and, killing Costas with his looks at times and stuff like that whenever Costas is out there. But there's a lot more like directing, but there's a lot of positive reinforcement and keeping everybody grounded and focused as well, which is like golden out of a captain because you're kind of getting both.
Yeah, well, I think look, we all talk about Virgil, right? And about everything he brings to the table and what a wonderful player he is. And at times last year, we questioned whether his leadership style worked. Was he too laid back? Did things come too easy for him to be the leader, right? Like one of the things everyone loved about Jordan Henderson was he looked like he had to work harder than everyone else at the club to be good enough to play at the club. And it was almost like he earned the right and the respect because they tried to sell him. They tried to jettison him. Where Virgil came in, let's be real. When he walked in, we were acting like a savior was here and we just bought the guy who was going to bring us to the promised land. And then when we won things, we said things like, well, we knew it would happen when we bought the guy who brought us to the promised land. We brought him in saying we're buying the best center back in the world. And then he proved it. I think more than anything, Paul was very boisterous and opinionated, right, on this show. That we may,
when was
it wasn't going to be good either if it didn't turn around. But you know that we might have seen the best of Virgil, right? That he may not respond from the injury, that the quick twitch stuff, and he raised a hand and admitted it. I feel like last year was the culmination of him convincing himself he was getting back to it, but he was still like convincing himself that he was getting back to that like top level. And that made it even harder to be the vocal leader because I think he was still thinking through matches. Like, can I do this? Will my body hold up? Can I make this run? And I feel like it all came back together this year where he feels perfectly fit. I think he's fully content. And the biggest point, and someone in this chat's going to call me a hater and be like, I knew that guy he hated Klopp. I think the way that Arne Slot manages this side makes it easier to be a leader than the way that Jurgen did it. Because I think Jurgen did it with so much piss and vinegar and the screaming and the yelling at players and the yelling at officials. I almost feel like it always felt like there was more stress in a Liverpool match, both as a supporter and as a player on the pitch when Jurgen was managing compared to the way that Slot goes about setting them up, playing more in control, less helter-skelter. I just think it's easier to be a captain and to be a calm presence in this environment than it was 12 to 24 months ago.
There you go. Thursday calls it. You did hate Klopp. Yes, it's official. But clip this, publish it, we're done. No, I mean, I agree to it in the sense, but I think that's what it demands. I think every manager is different. So your captain is going to reflect what the manager is asking him to do. I mean, you talk to anybody in that era, and they talk about Henderson, how he is basically another manager on the pitch. And that's what I think, Klopp demanded of him. And that's what he wanted. And it worked like a charm. We called him, and I still do, despite him like selling out at the end, like one of the best captains like this club has ever had, I think, in terms of like the way he carried himself until he carried himself to Saudi. But still, my thing is partly this is a bit easier in some ways, Bickler, because the situation that Slot is walking into is a lot different than what Klopp had to do. Because he is doing, he has leadership in this team now and experienced leadership. It's a lot easier to say, hey, you guys know how this goes, to guys like Van Dijk and Robertson and Mo and stuff like that are already kind of like carrying it. You don't need a character on top to kind of constantly drive it because you have that already established. So in that sense, I feel like Slot can come the way he did and say, hey, you guys already know what you're doing. Let's tweak it a little bit. You guys know what it takes. And then let them kind of lead as opposed to like try to push everybody up because these guys already been there, done that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost like the analogy of like when you look at Klopp and Slot, Slot obviously inherited a great team and Jurgen had to build it, right? But if you look at both of them, like I almost think that they're two entirely different cars that demand two entirely different drivers. And I think like when you look at Jurgen's system that was predicated on winning the ball in the final third and creating an attack from wide areas, like you wanted a rabid dog in the midfield as your captain. This side is much more controlled through possession, out of building out of the back and through the midfield. And you want a sturdy, strong Dutch voice happens to be the best center back in the world. It's almost perfect, right? It's almost perfect. Yeah. Two different cars, the right drivers for both cars. And I think like that really, I think that is helping Verge in this area. It is probably not hurting the fact that he's a captain as a center back that's not conceding goals regularly, right? I think last year, like it was hard for me to see the body language because to me, like his corrective action in games seemed very petty at times. Whereas like now it seems much more controlled. And I think that's easy for me to say in one hand, but I think at the end of the day, we're all human. And it's easy for us to lead when we're less frustrated, right? So I think like him being in this current system where they're not conceding a lot is definitely probably contributing to that.
And maybe he didn't see that role in himself, but in the past, it was a lot more about, and you need that, right? You need somebody chewing people out, especially if you're going to manage that back line, and especially if you have Trent on one side and Robertson on the other side. It's kind of like, you got to do that. And I kind of like that is needed. This year, I see a lot more of like positive, negative, as opposed to the constant like yelling and screaming he would do. Maybe he feels like he has to do that. I think he feel him along the back line, and then you have like obviously Robertson with the experience, but you have like Mo up top. You need some guys that when people don't feel comfortable, Gally, they can turn around and look at a guy and say, and kind of like lead by his calmness, basically see the calm in him. I was watching like one of the interview things, and actually Mo said it's like the only thing, he joked that it was the only thing he ever heard about from Robertson, like learned from Robertson, that when he used to miss chances, he would kind of get down on himself. And Robertson went to him and said, hey, you are a leader up there. If you have that look, everybody is down. So that's why he, like Mo talks about now, like kind of like almost laughing it off. We're like, what the hell are you laughing at? You missed. But it's almost like, almost laughing it off and saying it's going to come again and keep that calm. I feel like now, like Van Dijk feels like he's one of those guys that if Gravenberch is feeling a little shaky, he can look at some of these guys around him and be like, oh, we're cool. Okay, we're good. And then kind of like calm himself down.
I think you're spot on there. I think he was always able to do that for himself. I think where he's turned the corner is he's now able to do it for elite players and not just players like him. I mean, Konate is a different bird, right? We always talk about it.
Yeah.
I feel like the difference between Konate when he's playing alongside Virgil, the difference when Kwanzaa's playing alongside Virgil, you see it in a partnership, but I think you see it with McAllister. I think you see it when Endo's out there, and I love that he's different with every player. It almost feels like, to your point, with the manager on the field, I do feel like Virgil has taken the leadership role to a new level where he's actually considering each person's personality and like what makes them tick. And like Tim, you were a manager for a long time in a retail space, right? If you want to be a good manager for lots of people, you don't treat them all the same, because the 18-year-old kid acts different than the 31-year-old or the 50-year-old going through a divorce, or the introvert who doesn't, take their head out of their lap.
Or what?
What's that?
Pep over there going through a divorce?
I'm just preparing Kelly for round 2 here.
I'm good, guys. Think so.
Everybody's good. No, but I do believe I think the way that this side is built, I think you need a leader. I also think that I think it's easier, and it's not to take anything away from Virgil. I do think it's easier when you have so many leaders on the field, and leaders by their work rate in training, like Salah, even though he's not vocal. Leaders like Robertson, who, Robertson will yell at Van Dijk right after Van Dijk yells at him. Like he doesn't allow for it to be like, hey, you can yell at me, Captain, but I'm going to give it back to you. And to Paul, or whoever was mentioning, I think it was Paul mentioning, like even yelling at Ali, telling him to get in places. And like, it's almost as if Virgil has like fully embraced the role of club captain. Like last year, it almost felt like they gave him the armband every match.
Yeah.
And now I feel like he feels like it's his side and his club. And I do think there's a huge difference. It's night and day, in my opinion, between the captain I see this year and last year. The one that I have to raise my hand and say I complained an awful lot about.
And that's why he's staying and Mo's staying. And next year, Mo will be the vice captain. You heard it here first. Oh, no, contract talk. Nope, we're not doing that. Okay, let's look at this. We're not... Bickler, I'll start with you over here. Are you at this point saying this is a done deal?
Oh God. I think realistically it probably is, but I'll probably hold on for another few weeks.
So when will you say? When will you start singing?
I think that if City and Arsenal both drop points in the next 2 weeks, and we pick up 2 wins, I think it'll be over.
City and Arsenal?
Yeah.
Don't give me. Are you part of the City Paranoia Club?
I'm not. Look, listen. I just got done talking with Gally about this. Okay, I don't think that there's anything about that side that tells me that they're gonna rip off 30 straight like they did last year. I just think dude. I've watched enough like Friday the 13th movies to know that you don't fucking you don't like that dude can wake up under the water and come out and get you. I want to make sure they're dead.
Oh come on, Paul. They're 20 points behind.
They're the boogeyman, dude. You don't watch enough scary movies, man.
Here's why you gotta stop watching those shitty sequels, because that's when it goes downhill, dude. You gotta watch the original and then just turn it off, because you've been watching way too many sequels. And I mean, 20. Come on, Gally, tell him. Did you tell him in the Premier League show? Tell him here.
I did kind of laugh at that comment then too. They've been done for months. I mean, in my opinion, it's not even. I mean, what you saw yesterday. I think there's just as good of a chance that they lose on Wednesday to Spurs than they go and beat Spurs by some dramatic, turn of events on Wednesday. Like, I think they drop points in at least 2 more matches this year, which I think would almost, mathematically mean we'd only need like 75 or 78 points. Look, Arsenal's got to drop some more points. They have Forest coming up. Obviously, they play us at home. I saw that Leicester team Friday give up 4 to Brentford in 3 in the first half and a 4th in stoppage time. They could have lost that match 7 or 8-0, right? And that same Leicester team held Arsenal for 80 minutes at the Emirates. And to me, we saw the exact same Arsenal playing against West Ham. If Arsenal had bought a striker in January, if Arsenal had Saka coming back this week, I might think there's a miracle if we were to bottle it. But I honestly think we could drop points in 4, even 5 matches here out. I mean, all those home matches alone. I mean, if you could just beat Southampton, Everton, and Palace at home, you really only have to win 1 more of your road games and then get a couple draws. I mean, we're talking about teams West Ham, Everton, Newcastle, Southampton. With 7 home matches, I just feel like win 4 of those home matches, draw 2 more, and I think this thing's done.
I mean, I guess my thing, Bickler, is I can see us losing points, but honestly, the only scenario, I mean, yeah, I'm not even looking at City. I know we all have some PTSD at different levels, but yeah, I mean, 20 points, that's not happening. It's 21 points if you look at the goal differential, unless they make that up in 23. So that's not happening. That's 7 games out of, 11 left over here. So that's not happening. But for Arsenal's, I can see, if Arsenal lose points, and I never thought they would lose points against West Ham, to be honest with you. This was the game I circled and said Arsenal will lose probably some points going away to Forest, kind of like they probably did when we went away to Bournemouth and stuff like that. What I can see a scenario is like we kind of extend the league so much that we are able to rotate more and stuff, because there's a Champions League game, and then because of that rotation, you lose points. Otherwise, I mean, I don't see us like running the table at the end of the year, Bickler, but you only need 3-4 more wins to. And here's the thing: every time you get 3 points, this Arsenal team looks mentally already defeated, and they only have Champions League left. So you would think they're going to put all their eggs in that basket.
I just want to remind you guys, because we're all having a great time with this right now. I just want to remind you guys, the original question was, when will I celebrate this as a win? Am I celebrating it yet? And I said, as soon as I see Arsenal drop points in the next couple of weeks.
See, that's where you lost me again. You just said City right? Again.
I'm just saying, that's what I said. It's not that I think that anybody is coming back from this deficit, because I don't. And I really think that we're only a handful. I really think that we're only 2 or 3 wins away from this thing being like a really big statistical improbability for all these teams. So, like,
well,
we look at the fixtures. You have Forest is playing Arsenal and City and can beat either of those teams. So, like, I think this thing is pretty well wrapped up. I think 2-3 weeks. I think it'll be almost completely wrapped up.
So you think after the Southampton win, you're going to start the party?
Yes.
I forget who it was, which one of it was, but one of the bookmakers in England started paying out Liverpool title wins.
That's bold.
That is bold.
They started paying it out because they're paying it out at a reduced price if you're willing to take the early cash out. But the point is like they're hedging their bets because statistically they believe it would take something that even they don't want to gamble on, because ultimately if you leave it out there, then the closer it gets, the better the person with the long odds. And we have to imagine some people got, some people probably got bets on Liverpool at like 10 to 15 to 1 to win the Premier League.
Yeah.
And made substantial bets. So they were trying to pay those out at 5 to 1. And maybe those professional gamblers are like, well, I'll take that money. I'll just take the bird in hand, right? Because they're like Paul. They think that City's still going to rip off the rest of the way and find a way to get to 83 points and win the Premier League.
Wrap it up, fuckers. They lost one game. They lost one match from December 5th through the end of the year last year.
Well, they've lost 2 matches in the last week and a half, so I think things are different.
All I said was I'd like to see
Kevin De Bruyne last year didn't look 155.
This is not your grandfather's City, dude.
I'd like to see them drop points one more time this year before I can celebrate.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they both played tough road fixtures for them this weekend or this midweek on Wednesday, right? City's got to go to Tottenham, a bugaboo side for them. I said it to Paul earlier. Do you know that I believe City has gone to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium 5 times since it's opened and lost all 5 matches?
Really? They're probably the only one, right?
Yeah,
that's really odd.
It's like crazy, but Spurs are a perfect matchup for them because they hit you on the counter. They have players like Son that have kind of worldly players, and Spurs are one of those weird teams. They play better against the good sides and then go and lose to Ipswich, right? Like that's what Spurs do. So it'll be really interesting. And then you got Arsenal having, if I'm Arsenal, the last thing I want coming off 2 bad performances and a home loss to West Ham is to have to go to the City ground and play Forest.
Yeah.
While Forest is spiraling a bit right now. So this thing could be 14 points by halftime of the Newcastle match. Like we might know with a half hour to go that we have a chance to go 14 clear of both Forest and Arsenal. Granted with a game in hand, but that's the type of gap that I just don't think you make up.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're interested and you have money riding on who's going to make the Champions League and who's not, there's no reason for anybody to check out the City schedule anymore, people. Like, if I'm not worrying about it, trust me, nobody should be worrying about it. Me and Sergio are not worrying about it. You guys are in the clear. You go enjoy yourselves because we do the worrying for everybody over here. But I agree with Wade says, Bickler. I mean, that's the thing. Every time you win, not only, like they have less time, but it's like psychologically demoralizing. And I think this team, and because maybe, I don't know. I mean, you tell me, I'll ask you, like, is it the media? Is it the fans whining? Or is the team kind of... It reminds me of, we were talking about this morning with Mateusz, like Klopp constantly talking about the early morning games, the Klopp that, Gally hates, like complaining about like the morning games, and then the team playing accordingly almost, right? Kind of following it. Have they almost become like, yeah, we're not going to score, man. We don't have any forwards. It is what it is. It's almost like a team that is bringing itself down. And every time we win, that's only going to get worse.
I mean, that's possible. I think there's just some fundamental like things that go on with Arteta. I don't know that Arteta is the guy that's going to go out and win all the big trophies for you. I think he definitely got them over the hump. But like, if you looked at like, when we were in a state of delirium and doing a podcast for 24 straight hours because we thought that was a good idea. Like we talked about the fact that like this, when we looked at this league, it was really down to Arsenal, Liverpool, City. And for a lot of us, Arsenal was the front runner because they were defensively the best unit. They had the 2 best center back pairing in the entire world, in our opinion, for a lot of us. We thought it was just that they were kind of the business going into this year. And then if you look at the league, City's dropped off tremendously. Tottenham's not good. Aston Villa never lived up to the billing. Chelsea couldn't put it together. Like, this was Arsenal's year, and they couldn't get it done. And, like, their failure not only to get it done in the front half of the year, because they didn't, they were still second. And then on top of that, when they got hit with an injury crisis, the refusal to go into the market in January. And you want to talk about, like, do you remember how upset, like, I don't know, several people in this chat were about us not doing business in January? Like, can you imagine being an Arsenal supporter? Like, a clear need for a striker and you don't go get one? Like, that to me is completely on that club. And if you look at that, like, the pieces inside Arsenal, like, what's interesting to me is if you look at, like, what Arne Slot has done in year one with Liverpool, all the players that had major question marks on them. I mean, you could probably make an argument that Darwin should be excluded from this conversation, but everyone, all the major pieces with the question mark have gotten better under Slot. We're watching a Declan Rice decline before our eyes under Arteta. Like, so, like, I think that's the difference for me. Is, like, I don't know that Arteta has taken the pieces he has and made them actually better. So I don't know. All the teams get injuries. We've been relatively blessed. They have not, but I think a lot of that has to do with how you play and how you train as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure. I mean, I understand some of it can be luck, especially like if it happens like during the game and stuff like that. But when you have that many, the problem with the muscle injuries is they kind of like add up. So when you have like muscle injuries, you trot the other guy out who's not used to playing that many minutes. Now he gets a muscle injury, and it kind of like it can really snowball. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that January we had where we needed center backs. Some people were like, nope, we're good. Bring on Kabak and Davies, and we should be all good, kind of thing. And I can see the anger. Been on a couple of pods and like listen to a couple of like Arsenal fans, and I mean I do understand what they're saying, but don't want to dive into Arsenal too much. We talked about a little bit this morning, but I don't think they've spent the money that they have spent money. It's not like they haven't spent money. It's kind of like not United bad, but they've spent it in the wrong areas instead of the glaring needs. Instead of getting Sterling, you could have probably like invested that money a lot better. One thing that I meant to bring up the last couple of games, and it didn't happen, and I guess now I should definitely bring it up, Gally, is we started seeing some set pieces that were like coming directly from like the practice pitch, right? Like, you know, like the last couple of games we've done them, even if it's been short, like that guy runs that way, like it's something that was practiced. We're seeing it more and more. Like every game now, there's a one or two new ones instead of having like Robo hit the guy in the front post every single time in the head. I mean, obviously you're going to like that tweak, but we talk about Arsenal, who was scoring all their goals in set pieces. If this team can really start improving that area, because we do get a lot of them, sky should be the limit in terms of the goals we can get. And all without a set piece coach. We were talking about this because my biggest pet peeve recently has been I've never seen so many set piece coaches in my life. Where were these guys before? That they're constantly on the sideline now directing traffic, like in every goddamn corner kick. It's like, do this thing during practice, not during the game. Go ahead, Gally. I have to get it out of the system again. So.
Yeah, we had a throw-in coach that everyone heralded as like the reason why we could score quick goals on the counter, because we were so smart to get someone to get a throw-in.
I was just going to say, is the throw-in coach the long snapper?
I mean, if you got a throw-in coach that you credit, at least set pieces make sense. But I think honestly, you have to look at it and think to yourself, well, part of the reason we had to come up with some innovative and unique ways to create opportunities from set pieces is we were so god awful at them. We didn't create any chances. I think our XG from set pieces are the lowest in the entire Premier League, and we had the third most amount of set piece opportunities. That's how poor our numbers were. Now, there's a couple things there. One, both Trent and Robertson look like abject failures when they stand over a set piece these days. I was so happy when I saw Maka going over and taking corners.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like refreshing to see. Every once in a while you see Maka go over. You see Soboslai go over. You start to think to yourself, wow, like Arne Slot does not require the fullback to deliver the set piece from a right or a left peg. But I think that had something to do with it. I think this again shows what I think we have all grown to love in Arne Slot so far. he is not
Well, here
stuck
comes
in
some club hates. I can feel it. Go ahead.
no, he's not stuck in any one way. He alters his tactics throughout matches, play halves, and I think week to week based on what's working. And I think they were trying for a while to do these deep dropping set pieces and pick out Virgil. They realized the balls weren't that good. They tried for a couple weeks, they tried the whole Arsenal thing where all the defenders and the big guys are all behind everyone and rush to the middle. That wasn't working. I think what we saw on Sunday was outstanding. The quick little chip, Soboslai's ball. I mean, if McAllister's ball was a perfect delivery to give it to Soboslai, Soboslai's touch, the pace on it,
Yeah.
it gets just past the defender, and Mo just hammers the thing. And you're like, I remember saying I was in the pub and I saw the thing go in, and I turned around to like all the Liverpool people, and we actually said, we're like, did we just score from a set piece? And was it deliberate? Because the first thing I yelled was, why are you taking a short bleeping corner when the last two like right before they took the corner, the first thing I said was, wow, they have Rico Lewis marking Virgil van Dijk. I hope someone lands it on his forehead. Then they go short, and I'm like, what the? And then I just started creating squares.
I mean, here's the thing. I think we've been predictable, Bickler, and that's the problem. You know, like you're like Van Dijk, get in there, and you know everybody puts those two little guys to kind of block him in. Then you have the center backs and stuff like that. I mean, as a defender, you kind of as you mix things up, you're like, which one are they doing now? And that's why I think like the variety really helps. Because yeah, if you're overcrowding, because you can see now that people kind of have figured out Arsenal, like every corner kick was like a penalty kick earlier on the season. I mean, you know, people practice, they do such a job. So like people analyze what you're doing and come up with a counter. I feel like having multiple ways to attack when you have weapons like the height we have, like, you know, Konate and Van Dijk and stuff like that. And you can add these guys in who can really put a ball in from different angles. That's the ultimate way. I guess I'm more shocked that we have not done it before.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going to find out because, I mean, all set piece coaches have 3 days to respond to the email that I just sent out with exactly what they've been doing last week. So we're going to do it. We'll see what happens.
Hope it's not like the emails I sent. But so let's get to the Newcastle game. I don't know, unless you guys have any parting thoughts on like the City game, Gally, before we kind of like take a quick peek at the Newcastle game.
No, I just the only thing I would say is I found it very interesting in the second half that as the match kind of played out, and I know there were people in the chat earlier saying they got nervous, and you know that I'm used to that with Sir Z. I'm really used to that with Aaron, but there was nothing really for me that was that nervous. I guess the big surprise to me was at times like we decided to go into a low block in the second half and just defend. And I don't think it was like a whim, and I don't think it was by chance. I think it was his tactics, because I think he didn't think City had a chance to score, and he knew they weren't scoring 3. And I think part of that low block was actually like practicing. I think we might see a little bit more of that come big road matches in the Champions League. Like, I think the manager said, oh, you thought I needed 80% possession to kill you to sleep with a bunch of sideways passes? I'll show you how we win 2-0 with only 34% possession of the ball. And I'll give you the ball the whole second half because I believe my team can keep you out. And I'll do it with guys like Endo and Simicast coming in and bringing in Kwanzaa. And I thought all the subs made sense. I thought they were strong, smart rotation for Wednesday. So I know we're going to talk about Newcastle. I just thought the low block was interesting because, you know, when was the last time anyone said low block in regards to Liverpool in a positive light and Benitez wasn't the manager? I'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And like I say, you used to do it like 5 minutes, 10 minutes a game, but like we literally did it almost the entire half. And I think, you know, when you look at how we've done it, Bickler, I mean, look, my pacing to game importance percentage graph kind of goes like this. So I was usually like standing watching this thing. But even like as I watch, I mean, yeah, they have the ball, so you know something can happen, like a ball can bounce and stuff like that. But I never got the feeling that, oh, we're in trouble over here. There are games where you're like, we can't keep doing this for another 30 minutes. And I think I even said that at one point. I'm like, I don't know if you can do this for another 20 minutes. Then I said to myself, I think like Angel was downstairs watching with me at that time. I'm like, then again, we've done it for 70, so I'm sure we can do it for another 20. It just felt like the more we did it, it felt like, yeah, they're not going anywhere. They're not creating anything. I don't know if that speaks more on City or more on how we defended and like the shape we were able to keep. With the team, kind of like Gally's saying, that's not really used to doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those sort of indicate, I would give credit to Liverpool there. I think we did a really good job of basically shepherding the City's attack in the areas of the field that we knew weren't going to damage us, right? Like we kept them wide to an extent, and then I think we limited their options. So, like, I just thought we did a tremendous job across the board in terms of, like, you know, obviously rocky first 20 minutes there for Trent, but I thought, like, for the most part, we did a really good job of just neutralizing their pace and keeping it out wide, and then just limiting their options in the middle throughout. And a lot of that had to do with, like, the wide defending, but a lot of it had to do also with the fact that having those 4 attackers kind of static and then allowing them to drop deep in places allowed us to really, I think, strategically overload certain areas of the pitch during moments, which really, you know, like gave us numerical advantages.
And I think, you know, like you have a midfield, which really helps that, you know, you have 4 guys there. I know Gravenberg was mostly playing it safe. He wasn't driving too much with the ball, but as the defender, you do not know. And you can kind of see there are some times where it almost looks like a 4-2-4 suddenly. And we have 4 guys and you don't know where Jones and Szoboszlai are going to make those runs. And I think their midfield, one, they didn't have the legs. And Nico, I don't think he's used to the pace of the Premier League. So just could not keep up. By the way, yes, if you do not know, if you're a regular follower, Anand and Barak are going to be, I don't want to say representing American Scouser. They're going to be the American Scouser because anything, a lot can happen. So I don't want to take any responsibility, but they will be at the Newcastle game. So watch out for them. I told Barak his main job is to keep Anand away from Szoboszlai and nothing else the entire time. But Gally, what should those 2 expect to watch come Wednesday?
I expect them to see a professional performance. I don't know who said it, but they talked about the atmosphere being great in the stadium. I expect the supporters to be up for this. It's, you know, 3:15 our time, so it's 9:15 over there. They're going to be lubed up, liquored up. It's going to be a loud, raucous atmosphere. If you don't think the people drink, they drink heavily for.
No, but you said my mind went somewhere else. Keep going.
No, I know, but they're going to be fully.
Thanks a lot, Diddy.
Like I'm telling you right now, they are going to be. It's different at night there, and I think they will be loud. I think they will be drunk. I think when Newcastle comes to town, it's always a big event. I also think that we're going to see. I think you're going to see a couple surprises in the lineup. I don't think it will be just roll out the same guys. I think he has to do some rotation. I think you started to see some of that rotation on the substitutes that came in. It's going to be an interesting one, but a few of these midfielders are starting to look a little knackered. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see who he selects specifically in that midfield 3.
You would think Jota and Gakpo might be ready to go for this one. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow morning, I guess, when he does the press conference. But, I mean, here's another thing. Bickler, do you think – because I agree with Gally. In some ways, you look at it, and this was a lot more – I think they use a lot more energy defending than normally having the ball. We talk about having the ball and having the other team run. This was kind of like the reverse of that. I mean, you see Szoboszlai at the end of the game, rightfully so, after running like 8 guys worth, he was like collapsed on the field. But at the same time, we do not have a game for some time. Do you say, let's suck it up, see if we can get this done, and then we don't have a game after this? Or do you rotate? And you played all your 4 midfielders, to be fair, I mean, unless you throw Endo or somebody out there. But what do you expect to see lineup-wise?
Oh, I suspect Gally's probably right. I just don't know where that rotation is going to come. It's probably in the form of who's playing the ghost central 9 position for this side. That's like the worst position of the team. I think if I'm the manager, I'm going for 3 here, like strongly. just because I think you have to play from a position of strength and try to continue to put the pedal to the metal, so to speak here. So yeah, I'm going as strong as I can possibly muster here. But I think the surprise, I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to play Gravenberch and Maka. I think you have to. I actually think the midfield three is probably set. Like, can you really afford to go away from Maka, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai? I don't know you can.
Szoboszlai has done 4 consecutive 90-minute matches in 13 days.
Because nobody else does what he does.
But at the end of when that whistle blew, the final whistle, he literally drops to his knees because he's literally gassed and exhausted. I'm not saying he doesn't start, but McAllister looked the same way, and I think Gravenberch. I personally think Jones starts this match because he gave you a good performance, and he was the one taken out on 70 minutes. And I think Jones gets a start here, whether that's for McAllister and you drop Gravenberch deepest and you play Szoboszlai and then you bring Mac in and you push Jones forward, or it's for Szoboszlai. I do think Jones starts, in my opinion. I genuinely think Jones starts this match for one of the three because I think the manager knows you can push them, but let's be real. If Virgil is 1 and Mo is 1A, Szoboszlai is quickly becoming 1B on the third most important guy, especially in the big matches. And as big as Newcastle is, I think with Arsenal dropping points, you have these fixtures coming in the midweeks. I just think you have to protect some of these players. And I do think we're starting to see slightly more and more faith bestowed upon Endo, because those 5-minute appearances are turning into 20-minute appearances, and 20-minute appearances are turning into 25 and 30-minute appearances. And I think as time goes on, we might see him get 20, 30 minutes to give McAllister and those guys a little bit more of a break. Not against Newcastle, please, because that is a powerful running midfield. But I said it on the other show. If you told me Joe Linton was playing, I would have told you I want to make sure that we have Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, and McAllister in there because I think Joe Linton makes their midfield that much stronger and more powerful, and his running kind of would offset what we do. I think Jones can hold his own in this matchup, and I think you have to rest one of those three. I'll probably be wrong. Other than that, I think the back line pretty much picks itself. The manager keeps rotating them out. The only one is maybe Simicast for Robertson, but that would make me a little nervous. But it is Murphy, not Gordon, but I think I would consider it.
I'm going with this over here with Wade. I think Robertson, you do a 60-30. I think he kind of like did that well. So he didn't play the 90. I do think Szoboszlai plays in this one. I think it goes back to saying, suck it up, Buttercup. After this, we don't play for time. Even if he does a 60-30 and brings Jones in and stuff like that, based on who's not looking all that this game, I think you go out there with your strongest 11 and finish it off. I mean, they've just played as well. So it's not like you're going against a team who has rest and you coming from Europe or something like that. So I think all things being equal, you go out with your strongest lineup. And assuming, like I think obviously Wade is assuming too that Jota and Gakpo will be good to go for this one. If they were close for the City game, you would think they would be able to go for this one. Maybe he'll do something like, starting with Gakpo and Diaz, with Diaz in the middle, and then eventually bring in Jota and slides, like Diaz outside if Gakpo can't give you 90 or something like that. But it really depends on, obviously, with those two guys, it depends on what their minute limit is. Go ahead, Gal.
I was just going to say, Diaz, to me, he offers you so much flexibility by being able to be a legitimate substitute and minute eater for any of the front three, that if Jota and Gakpo are fit, that just makes the most sense for me in this type of a matchup. And you have Diaz coming off the bench. And again, Diaz has been playing, been putting in 90-minute shifts in the 2 matches that Gakpo has been out of. And I know he got a little bit of a break at the end of the match against City, but I just think as much as we keep saying, oh, it feels like the league's in the bag, we got to go win this thing. There is a big Champions League trophy that's sitting out there, and we're going to have midweek matches starting in less than a month that really ratchet things up. And I think the manager has to be diligent about the rotation and continue to rotate players because let's be real. He doesn't have much faith in Endo other than closing out matches, and he doesn't have any faith in Harvey Elliott playing real minutes.
But I think that goes back to what I'm saying. That's why I feel like you go strong, you keep racking these 3 points, and not say, well, it's okay, we can rotate over here, so that when the Champions League comes in, the good thing with the PSG games is you have a full week in between because of the FA Cup, I think, or I don't know what it is, but like you're gonna be able to get some rest.
There's a week off in between.
I think the Southampton game is the worst timing because it's a game that you could have rotated, and it's a game where there's nothing on both sides where you can kind of trot out your best lineup kind of deal. But that's why I feel like you go as strong as possible, rack up the 3 points, and then, I really think Arsenal lose something. And it goes back to, I can't remember who was saying it in the comments, but I think that's kind of like the last nail in the coffin. They're like, okay, now it's done. Because I think you can crack the door open. They were saying it's done, right? We got 2 draws, and then suddenly all the Aaron and his club went outside, started screaming. And then, like Arsenal fans started getting like hopeful and stuff like that. And then now everybody's back in their hole. And I think, you want to keep him there by losing points to Newcastle. If they get a tough away win against Forest or something like that, you don't want to reopen the conversation. Let's do case closed and then just worry about City like Bickler over here. So Bickler.
What?
What do you expect? Give me a score prediction for this Newcastle game.
I don't see Slot starting 2 strikers that haven't been in the regular rotation for a week or two right out of the gate. I think this one – I don't think this one's going to be the crazy high-scoring matches that we're used to seeing with Newcastle. I got a feeling this one's going to be – I'll go 2-1 Liverpool.
2-1. Shelton is going with the 3-1. Gally, what you got for us?
I am going to say that they build on the momentum of the last match and they win another match 2-0.
I am going with the Timuchin special that everybody's going with over here with the 3-1 instead of the slot special, which has become like just classic. I got to go back. I didn't get a chance. I was going to go and look how many games have finished 2-0 this season because it has truly become a slot special. But another win.
I think they actually have already set the record for 2-0 wins in a Premier League season.
Are you serious? Yeah, I mean, it has
their
been
record. Their record.
And honestly, most of them have been comfortable 2-0s. For a worrier like me, 2-0 is never comfortable, but for most people, it is. Wade is going with the 3-2.
How many times have Liverpool not scored 2 goals this season?
Do you know the answer, or are you just throwing it out there? Really?
The
Forest?
1-0 twice to Forest.
That's right.
The 1-0 loss and the 1-1 draw.
Okay.
And
look at Gally bringing his own trivia, Bickler. When are you going to bring your own trivia?
And the 1-0 victory over, and the 1-0 victory over Crystal Palace. Every other time we've scored 2 goals or more. And like for that, right? For that, to me, that's what makes this Liverpool side so tough to even work against. Because you have to score 3 goals pretty much to beat them, which is why we have 1 loss. And it's not getting talked about enough. We're doing all the things. We aren't conceding goals, and we're scoring enough that even a team has to play their best day to beat us. You know, we have the 2-2 draws with Fulham's and 3-3 draws with Newcastle, and that took awkward situations. So,
and honestly, it's the reverse for Arsenal, right? Like, you know, while the team you're playing says, I got to score at least 2 to get something out of this game, once the team scores against Arsenal, like once West Ham scored, you could see Arsenal thinking, oh, shit, man, we could have scored 1. Now we're going to score 2 kind of a thing. So when you're having trouble, this thing is hopefully will be a done deal shortly over here. But we'll be back for the pre-match for that game. But obviously before then, I'll be back tomorrow morning with the morning show and the panel tomorrow night. We have a full panel too. Let's see if Alan's going to be there and where the Arsenal hopes are at. But I know we have Newcastle, Villa, Brentford so far on the panel tomorrow. So do tune in for that. Have an awesome week, everybody. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and all that kind of stuff. As I always say, go grab a friend by the ear and drag their butt over here as well, because we got all kinds of good stuff coming up. But have a great week, everybody, We'll see you guys next week. Take care.